Hello, everybody, and today we are going to be talking about applying effective design to our slideshow presentations. And in this particular video, I'm going to be discussing some of the aspects of my own skills when it comes to designing presentations after looking through the provided checklist, as well as defining the target audience that will be used for the modules to come. So let's go ahead and get started here. So to begin, within this module, we had to look at a checklist for creating effective slides. And after looking at the checklist, these were kind of my summary of my presenter's knowledge. It seemed that I was pretty proficient in using slide editing software. I'm able to navigate both PowerPoint and Google Slides to create effective presentations. Truthfully, I usually use Google Slides just because I find they're a little bit more easy to navigate, easy to access the tools, so on and so forth. And I also just like the accessibility that Google allows. I think it's easy to video share, copy and paste images, where I find PowerPoint can sometimes be a little bit more tricky. The other good thing about Google is that it allows you to download anything you create, whether that be a document or a presentation, as a Microsoft PowerPoint or document, which is, just goes to the level of accessibility that Google has. The other skill that I have in looking through that checklist is the ability to provide audio for my students via screencast. And this is a skill that I really learned how to do throughout this program, about how to use Screencastify to add that audio so that students can follow along with presentations with a quote unquote um, teacher audio there providing them for that so that they don't have to go through that presentation alone. Lastly, I have knowledge of embedding videos that help communicate my message. After reflecting, there was a couple things that I wanted to focus on here. One of the goals that I had in moving forward was incorporating captivating visuals to help communicate my message. In this week's discussion, I felt one of the best quotes that I saw was from a classmate that stated, "We don't want our images to become a Where's Waldo search," and it's actually um, hurting the students in our presentations as opposed to helping them understand our content more thoroughly. And I thought that was something that really stuck out to me, and it made me question some of the things that I do in my own slideshows. And I really want to use visuals, graphs, so to speak, to help enhance my message, because I was always that student that needed a visual. I couldn't just look at text. I needed something to um, see in order to really grasp the material. So that's one of my goals that you're going to see me use throughout this presentation, is using captivating visuals that are meant to enhance the text on the screen. Some of the challenges that come along with creating effective presentations, for me, is researching some different applications and kind of really pushing my skills to the limit to try to enhance my slides a little bit more so. And I'll be talking about that a little bit more later on. Some of the other challenges that come with any research, especially when it comes to new editing software or anything that involves technology, is always cost. I know a lot of sites have free trials, and there's usually templates that you can access that are free, but usually some of the really effective stuff comes with a cost. So we'll be talking about that a little bit later as well, and navigating that. And then always we want to make sure we are addressing the proper copyright laws. So let's get into the target audience for the remainder of the modules for this class. So we'll define that target audience now. The target audience for the module that will be launched is for ninth grade English students, and these are about 14 to 15 years old. The setting is a co-taught classroom setting, so there technically are two teachers in the classroom. And then more specifically, this will also be for a blended learning environment. So students will be in a traditional classroom as well as using their Chromebooks to access any online content, which obviously will be launched with the module here. There's a mix of both male and female students, and going off of the blended learning, our school is one-to-one, and all students have access to a Chromebook, and that works at home as well as on the district's Wi-Fi. It being a co-taught classroom, obviously the primary focus there is struggling students, and there's a 70-30 ratio of regular students to students with specific accommodations per their IEP 504 plans. There are students who need close proximity to the instructor, to positive peer role models, to the screen. There's a student with a PM device that they need to use for their hearing aid, and then just the multitude of other accommodations that come with 504s and IEPs. So we want to make sure we are specifically addressing that, and which we'll talk about when we get into universal design for learning. Going on, the target audience is predominantly white, Indian, and Asian students that make up the demographic. And it is roughly a very affluent neighborhood, and these students have access to many different resources. So they're not limited in any regards there. In terms of the types of learners, throughout this year, I've really gotten to know each of my classes, and it seems that many of them they learn socially and they learn kinesthetically, meaning they like to be in small groups. They like to engage with the content with one another. A lot of the class activities and outside activities have them engaging in some sort of social learning. And then also kinesthetic learners, meaning they learn by doing and getting in there, so to speak. So that's really how I try to plan most of my lessons, just because those are the ones that work really well with this year's group of students. I've also noticed that there's always increased engagement when technology is part of the lesson. For example, we usually use Kahoot, which is a gamification app that teachers can use to create various quizzes to help learning and reviewing become a little bit more fun. And we do that with grammar, and those are always a blast. Kids have a great time with those. So anything involving some sort of technology, social, where they get to talk with one another and learn by doing, are going to be successful lessons with this particular target audience. So the instructional need that we're going to be focusing on here is the acquisition of new vocabulary as it applies to the novel To Kill a Mockingbird, which they are kicking off this week. So this is kind of a pre-reading mini unit that they'll do to get them acclimated to some of the vocab that they're going to see in the novel. How this need was identified, this is actually a school-wide initiative that we started last year, and it's kind of coming up in each of the content areas, not just English. The goal here is to build student vocabulary. So their students are getting used to and accustomed to all this different types of vocabulary to help really build that vocabulary level. And the lesson topic that we're going to be focusing on here is applying new vocabulary to real-world contexts, which we'll talk about their use of Frayer models, and they're going to be using some social media with that as well to kind of make the connection to the real world and also making it a little bit more engaging. Before we jump into all of that, this unit, or this module, I should say, really focused on Universal Design for Learning, or UDL, and that really focuses on 3 specific principles. That is the multiple means of engagement, the multiple means of representation, and multiple means of action and expression. And if we want to look at the research here supporting this, there was a study done by Lohman, Booth, Hathcote, and Turpin in 2018, and they got from qualitative data that a common theme in the participant responses was that the interaction with the course professor helped them feel more connected to the course, valued as a student, and supported in their learning. And this is, no small feat. And anytime we can use any applications of those principles for universal design for learning in our lesson planning, we are clearly going to have a very positive, engaging response from students. Some of the things that we need to take into account here with UDL is the varying learning styles. And a study done by Smith and Basham from 2014 says that in order to support the design going to universal design for learning, teachers have to understand the variability within their environment, meaning they have to understand that no one learner learns the same way. There's seeing, visual, auditory, reflective, kinesthetic learners, and we have to adapt to all of those things in order to make our lessons more effective and to reach the goal of reaching all students in our lessons. For the target audience, their prior knowledge, there are 20 new vocabulary words specific to the novel For To Kill a Mockingbird, and they have that familiarity with instruction because each of the novels that we do throughout the year has their own list of 20 vocabulary terms. So they kind of get into a rhythm here on how to learn and apply new vocabulary. They know that there's going to be some social interaction and those types of things along the way. So they are familiar with some of the instruction that will happen. And they have created Frayer models in the past. In terms of multimedia that's going to be used, we're going to focus first on relevancy and real-world connections. The students are going to build vast vocabulary, which is going to be pertinent to any real world. As they get older, they're going to need that vast vocabulary. They're going to be using vocabulary in real-world context because they're going to be using them and applying them to, social media posts, making memes, just things that are more relevant to their world and things that are going to engage them and interest them. And then also they're going to have some team collaboration here, which is a real world skill that they're going to need for any profession that they go in when they work with small groups. A study that was done by Deaton in 2015 states by providing reinforcing stimuli in the form of graphical representations, annotations, via peer comments, and the ability to interact with information in a live setting, social media enhances student opportunities for memory creation and memory retention. And I think that gets really into the relevancy and something that they're interested in. If they're interested in it and it is engaging to them and they can use it in a real world setting, they're going to have that memory retention like Deaton is suggesting here. Continuing on with multimedia, with interactivity and collaborations. And this is really going to come from their small group discussions that they're going to get face-to-face. There's going to be some student-led instructions of their Frayer model where they're going to be assigned one word, and they're going to have to do a couple different real-world connections in defining that word. Then their peers are going to give them feedback, which is always really helpful because they get to hear it from their peers and kind of learn how they can improve. And they're going to collaborate to put together an effective presentation to teach the 4 words that they're going to be assigned as a group to the class. So there's a lot of student-led discussion, student-led instruction, and then just that collaboration as a team and getting feedback from one another. Motivation and engagement. Again, there's going to be interactive learning, a lot of collaboration, a lot of students discussing socially. There's some student choice in the fact that they're going to be able to use any type of social media app that they want to make that real world connection to their vocab word. There's some self-monitoring of progress. Students will be using Quizlet as well throughout this module to help assess their words so they can kind of see how they're coming along and learning those words and applying them. And then again, the use of social media, which we said at the beginning with this target audience is going to be very effective because they get to use technology, they get to use their social media. The learning will be assessed in a couple different ways, a couple different formative assessments. There's going to be Quizlet interactive practice, and that's the gamification of it. Some daily word practice with their small group. They're going to be creating Frayer models, and then they're also going to be doing a social media post or meme creation, and that kind of gets into the student choice. And then there's a summative assessment at the end of this mini unit in the form of a Google form quiz that's 20 questions to see how they have mastered that content. Some challenges in the slide software that we're addressing here are using a balance of text and visuals, using more virtually or visually appealing graphics that adhere to the symmetry of the slideshow, researching different applications that provide those effective slides, and then lastly, how am I applying these new skills? I researched extensively Slides Carnival and Slide Model, which were providing me with different templates for both Google Slides and Microsoft PowerPoint. And those were pretty interesting. I'd like to jump into those a little bit more and do a little bit more research there. So just kind of expanding my knowledge on how to make my presentations a little bit more effective. And then using images to coincide with information to support visual learners. Throughout this presentation, I tried to use graphics that were going to match and enhance the text on the page that made it match what we were talking about on that particular slide. Thank you very much for your time and listening to my presentation. Here are some of the references that I used throughout the presentation. Thank you and have a great day.